fact that we don't die. There's no more question about it, even scientifically. We're connecting outside space and time. So we're defying the current laws of Newtonian physics. But when you get into the world beyond space and time, that's where you find loved ones who have passed. It's what I call 21st century spirituality. This train left the station a long time ago. People need to get on board with the fact that we are eternal souls. I'm not only human. None of us are. We're souls here and now, and therefore we're part of one big web connecting all that is. And you can learn to tap into that in your day-to-day life, not just when having a reading with a medium or connecting with loved ones.
Welcome back to New Realities. I have a really exciting episode today with Suzanne Giesemann. She is the author and contributor to this new book from Common Sentience called Mediumship. And Suzanne's done so much to bring the idea of mediumship to the public lately. And you have people you're training, and it's about a whole way of looking at reality.
When you realize that we can connect with loved ones who have passed, it naturally leads to the question, well, what does that mean about who we all are? And we're souls. So that translates into a whole way of living that I call the awakened way, which helps us to acknowledge I'm not only human. None of us are. We're souls here and now, and therefore we're part of one big web connecting all that is. And you can learn to tap into that in your day-to-day life, not just when having a reading with a medium or connecting with loved ones.
So for you and for many people now, mediumship, people have crossed over, it's still being present in their it's a fact. It's not a belief, it's nothing like that. You talked to me in the past about why it became so obvious to you with I think it was your niece that really
No.
It was
Stepdaughter, my
your
stepdaughter.
Sorry, that really
killed, struck by lightning, and that's what started me on this journey. And you are right. I love when you put it that firmly. It is a fact that we don't die. There's no more question about it, even scientifically. We can't replicate a connection with someone across the veil because we're connecting outside space and time. And so we're defying the current laws of Newtonian physics. But when you get into the world beyond space and time, that's where you find loved ones who have passed. So it's what I call 21st century spirituality. This train left the station a long time ago. People need to get on board with the fact that we are eternal souls.
Right. I love that, and I believe in that. So if that is true, and I'm sure it is, because many people, I've met people who've had near-death experience. Then what does that mean about reality and who we are as human beings? Can you go into that a little bit? Because that's really interesting.
Well, this is what both of my latest books, the Mediumship book, is focused fully on the fact that we can all learn to have sacred communications with loved ones across the veil. And then my other book, The Awakened Way, is all about learning that when you realize through mediumship that we are not only human, you can make this shift in perspective at any time and seek and gain guidance from higher beings. You can have adventures in consciousness that show you that we're living a story here. We're playing out roles, but that's not the entirety of who we are. Making that shift makes all the difference in the world.
We're actually there all the time, right?
No doubt about it. No doubt. We are, a good analogy would be an iceberg. The human part of us is the part that appears solid above the water, but there's so much more to us as souls. And that part of us, the higher self, is definitely having other experiences right here, right now. And we just have to learn how to shift our focus and access the higher self.
So what was the whole reason for this play, this illusion of 3D, this Maya? Why did we come incarnate?
Easy. For the experience of it, to experience and use our creativity as direct emanations of one field of consciousness, and see just how much more love and connection we can establish within this set that we're acting in.
But don't we have that already, that oneness, when be not incarnated in that? So
Yeah.
being embodied gave us different lessons then, are you saying, or what?
Well, lessons, but not in the sense of we need that. Like you go to school to learn your lessons. It's a really great way to understand it, Alan, is why does an artist have to paint? Why does a composer have to create music? Why does a writer have to write? Because there is just so much potential and creative potential welling up inside. You just have to express it. So here we are as source with all this potential needing to be expressed. And we say, let's create this earthly realm, and we'll just divide ourselves into all these beings, not just human, but animals and plants, and see what happens when they interact and how much more creative we can be than just sitting here being.
So this plane, they call it the plane of demonstration, is the way we can express something that we can't express in those other realms. Is that?
Oh, absolutely. We're very limited here in our expression of consciousness. We have to see the world through the lens that our brain requires us to see through. And most people only use our physical senses to have experiences here. But when you realize you also have non-physical senses, that widens the lens of our experience here and really opens us up to miracles many times.
But are there things that we could only do here with expression, like paint and dance, that we can't do in those other realms of expression, which makes it valuable to the body? Yeah.
For example, I've been told by those across the veil that one of the only things they really miss is physical touch, the sensation that we get from that. So that's one thing that the body, the illusion of a body, affords us in this reality. And as I say that, I can hear people listening saying, what do you mean the illusion of the body? Well, the body is not solid. Ask a scientist. It breaks down into energy and information. It appears as solid because that's the way that energy is perceived through our physical senses. But even the physical senses are part of the illusion. Very real while we're having this experience, but really it's all just a unique experience in consciousness.
It is. And you say anyone can do it because you now have groups of people following you, like teaching people. I mean, is it how, and you say it's easy, people can do this. What do we need to do? Because I teach remote viewing, it's similar, but not quite mediumship.
Very similar. And you started to say, I say it's easy.
Well, maybe you didn't
It
say
may
that.
be easy, but it definitely can take commitment. The number one task we need to learn to do is to focus the mind and notice the nature of the mind and how thoughts arise and sensations and feelings arise. Once we step back and become the observer of how the mind operates, we start to notice what's our normal pattern of sensations, thoughts, and feelings versus things that appear to be outside our normal experiences. So you notice what stands out. So by setting a very clear intention, I want to connect with, for example, my stepdaughter who passed. I would expand my consciousness by shutting out the external world. I would pay attention to what starts arising in consciousness, probably my to-do list and the sound of a lawnmower outside. And I would just notice that's not Susan and go back to focusing until suddenly I become aware of a presence and maybe a voice or an image. And then I just go deeper into that experience. So you can train yourself to do this. That part is available to all of us.
That is similar to remote viewing. For me, it's like a window that opened, and you came from a military background. You had no idea about this. So what was that moment? I mean, I know you have the whole story for your stepdaughter, but was there a moment where boom, it popped open?
There there was a moment when I realized I could do it for other people, because I began meditating daily after her funeral, after Susan's funeral, to try to connect with her, not knowing if I could, just knowing I was going to stay with it until I did. I didn't realize that I was training myself in that focus and in expanded states of consciousness. The moment when I realized I could do it was when a mediumship teacher called me to the front of her room and said, "You can do this too." I was there only to write that teacher's story. And I tuned in and I discerned all kinds of details about a man in spirit who was there, including his nickname, Twinkle Toes. So that was so random, so specific, that I knew, wow, I've really tapped into this. But Alan, that's what caused me to ask the question, how is that even possible? That was back in 2009, and I have spent over a decade, learning how it's possible and teaching other people
Well,
how to make
how is it even possible? Because when these on the other side, there's no personality in the same way. So what is retained and what are mediumships actually accessing? Is it the personality that was here? It's not who they are now. So who are these beings? Yeah.
What you just expressed is human thinking, that it's either or, and it's not. We are both the personality and the soul, and the personality absolutely continues across the veil as long as it serves a greater good. So if I, as a medium, want to tap into somebody's loved one who passed, they may be enjoying an experience as a personality-less soul, but as they feel a loved one here connecting with that soul, they simply engender that personality again and continue the story. So the personality does continue across the veil. It's my anchoring point when I connect with loved ones. I have to feel that personality and have my clients say, "Oh my God, that's them," before I'll even continue, to make sure that the connection is very real.
But once people pass that veil, what are they really? I mean, and is it, I mean, people say it's timeless, but what do they do all day long? I mean, what's going,
Yeah.
People have asked. Yes.
Well, it's interesting because there's a free ebook on my website under gifts, on the gifts page of SuzanneGiesemann.com, that it's called Awakening. And at the end of it is a download about what life is like in the afterlife. But actually, I have condensed that whole download into a beautiful section in my mediumship book about what the afterlife is like. And our loved ones are enjoying experiences much like we have here, but without the sense of time. So just imagine what your dreams are like.
Mm-hmm.
You go to visit Paris, you play golf and get a hole in one, but it's more like lucid dreaming, where we're aware that we can create any experience we want, and it just happens. In your dreams, there's no sense of time. That's the best way to understand the timeless nature of the astral realm. But they're still learning and growing and experiencing and growing in sharing love, which is pure connection.
So what's the feeling about past lives? Do these now beings embody go and have other lives?
My understanding, these are actually parallel lives playing out within the soul. So if you were to imagine the soul like a deck of cards, the life you're living now is one hand that the soul deals. And so it may decide to deal another set of cards, another hand for this experience, and have multiple experiences that would play out in this reality sequentially, linearly.
Mm-hmm.
But across the veil, all of those lifetimes are accessible at once because there's no time.
There's no time. So what's the future? Can you tap into the future?
We can see certain milestones that are coming, but because of the fact that free will is the major wild card here that allows for growth and evolution, some things will change as people make choices and interact with each other.
So you're really tapping into a soul essence, right? The soul
Absolutely.
is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
embodiment of all those timeless timelines, in a sense. And so,
Yeah.
yes. So what's the difference then? I mean, I have my own understanding of the difference between a soul and a spirit. What do you say it is?
Well, I say that the word in my vocabulary, spirit, is synonymous with consciousness. It's the all that is. It's the essence of everything. A spirit is a pattern of energy and information that is no longer in a body, and it's part of a soul. So I tap into spirits. It's really, I'm tapping into your loved one who's no longer in a body.
It's a kind of relationship between soul and spirit. What I heard is that the spirit descended from the source, and the soul was created as the keeper of the wisdom of those experiences.
I like that. Yeah.
That's a term from Ramtha. It was the child of the spirit. So when you say soul spirit, the soul is the individualized lessons of adventures in creation that some people call the Akashic records. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So ultimately, then, we're here to experience and have fun and to enjoy.
It's not all about having fun. And this is why many people feel empty a lot of times, because they're raised to feel that we should reject any experience that's not positive, and we shouldn't feel anger, and we shouldn't feel sadness, when the soul came here for the fullness of the human experience. And the more you allow yourself to feel appropriate human emotions such as grief, then you're suddenly feeling full. And you're realizing the soul is this wholeness, and we no longer feel empty. So this is part of awakened living, is realizing that there's an underlying joy that comes from just realizing I'm already whole and complete, but it doesn't make life always happy and wonderful. Yet you realize that beneath the downs and ups of being human, there's this part of us that never changes, that is always peaceful, and it's right here.
You're absolutely right. That's something Anita Mojani talks about too. Do you know her work?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah, that's probably the best near-death experience book I've read, the Dying to Be Me book. So the awakened life, how does reality change when everyone has this awareness that you have, that we are forever beings? What's the world look like?
Oh, you see the world as if you're a spectator on the balcony, and when it gets to be too much, you turn to your partner and you say, hey, pass the popcorn. It's really getting rough down there. But you realize that we came here for the experience. So maybe when we step back on the stage, we'll take more of that peace with us and learn to cooperate more with others, not get knocked off balance by our human story, and stop identifying as only the role. I sat in meditation this morning and I was feeling a little out of balance, and it just became very clear to me, whoa, I'm getting all caught up in this role. And I just left the story behind and sat in utter peace for a few moments and said, wow, I need to step off the stage more often.
Yeah, well, you're great because you are on the stage. People are looking to you because you came from a very different background. You came from that other world, and you've had this awakening that everyone can have. And
I just traveled back from leading 450 people on an awakened way cruise in the Mediterranean, and literally was on stage, and it was tiring, but I just noticed how it affects normal life all the way home on that long trip with 3 flights and all the crowds, and nothing knocked me off balance. I just sat back and said, okay, maybe we'll miss that flight. All right, maybe this is going to happen. But just, you learn to flow and accept what's happening and ask constantly, what's the best way to react to this? How can I make a difference to those around me? That's always fun to do. And how can I send love to that person over there who's really knocked off balance? It just, you start to realize that we're all connected, and that every situation we find ourselves in is an opportunity to raise the vibration.
Well, yeah, that's the most exciting thing that's happening here. You're absolutely right. And how is it possible culturally for the world to live in the awareness that you have, that no one dies, what does the world look like when that happens?
It is possible, but my guides unfortunately said it's not going to happen in this lifetime, that we're all going to suddenly have an awakening. But it's programs like yours, it's books like these that are helping people on an individual basis to do what their soul came here for, to move past the illusion and remember, and then just start helping others wake up. That's the fun. That's the joy. As we say, oh, look at that person gets it and that person gets it. Then we look at the news and we see the conflicts and the bombs dropping and we say, okay, we have more work to do, but we don't despair. We just keep working on ourselves and helping others to find ways to cooperate.
But it is possible at some point, maybe not in the soon future, but for a world to live in that awareness.
Yes. Yeah.
What would that world look like to you if we all had that awareness?
It would look like the world we go to when we leave our bodies, and then it would be game over here.
But we'd have our bodies and it'd be a world of embodiment and then how would people live different?
How would we live differently? Oh my gosh, we would respect each other. We would greet each other with love. We wouldn't feel fear. We wouldn't act like victims. We wouldn't hurt each other. It's a utopia, but it is possible. I love that this book, the mediumship book, has 30 stories in the middle from ordinary people. None of us is ordinary. Each of us is unique. But each person who didn't consider themselves a medium, just like me, who has had these after-death communications and shares them in the book to show that that kind of world is possible for all of us because we are all connected.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. This is the new mediumship Suzanne Giesemann put together for Common Sentience. It's about to be released any day now. Get it on Amazon. And it's such a great contribution to this field because we are changing, right? You see, yes, there's bombs still being dropped, awful things, but there's a shift. I mean, you could not imagine someone from you being in the military having this. Right. So if it's possible for you, do you think it's possible for other people you worked with back then who are still?
I know it is. I connect with people and they hear about what I'm doing now, and everybody has a story, Alan. I call them NOEs, no other explanation stories. We have STEs, spiritually transformative experiences, and NDEs. But you don't have to die to have an amazing connection across the veil, either with your loved ones, with guides, some kind of synchronistic event, an NOE where you say, oh my God, there really is something more. I need to get more connected here.
So with people who do get these inklings, but how do you train people? I mean, it's a whole process, I know, but people say, yeah, I'm feeling, what's like the first thing you do tell people when you come to your classes and,
The first thing is and part 3 of the mediumship book has practices to get you started on that path. Anybody, you don't have to be a working medium to make connections with your own loved ones. The very first step is examining your BS, and that stands for belief system, right? Look at the thoughts in your mind that say, well, I couldn't possibly do that, or I'm only human, and start questioning that and saying, well, what if? I love that question, what if? What if she's right and we really are souls? And what if what Alan does, remote viewing, is possible? What does that mean for me? So you start questioning reality and changing your belief system. Then you set a very clear intention from the heart to connect clearly with some non-physical being who will help you in this process. And you ask for signs and you start noticing, wow, I asked for that sign and there it is. I just got it. And so with this childlike sense of wonder, you start to interact, even if you don't see a being that's helping you, you start to notice you're asking questions, you're getting answers. You're asking for guides, for signs, and you're getting them. And this is just the start. It just opens up from there.
So you do see things. You're actually seeing beings, huh? Or you're just sensing it?
No. I see charades when I do sessions for people. I see images in my mind of hands doing things. I see images very clear that are symbolic and metaphoric, that are very meaningful. I just did a session for a woman the other day, and I said, I'm being shown you writing, and now you're drawing. You're very creative. And she said, oh, I'm an artist. So, I mean, we just nailed that right away, but I didn't see her. I see a hand doing that. So it's just the way it unfolds for me. Some people absolutely see spirits. That's just not the way it unfolds for me.
Well, what happened to me I was with this woman and she was talking about her mother had passed, and I started to feel, I just said, you know, your mother loves you very much, and I felt this presence. I'm not sure if I was making that up or it was I mean, how do you know? But
Well, this is the beauty of the way I was trained and the way I train people is the way you know you're not making it up is the novelty of it, that it's you sense things you couldn't possibly know. So in your case, I'm sure you felt that, but you could have been making it up. So what you do is you ask the one who you feel to tell you something you don't know about them, that this person can validate. And then you trusting that that's actually possible, that you could perceive that. You just blank your mind instantly and notice what comes into awareness. It could be an image of something, a word, a phrase, and you share that. That's how you
that's
get.
good. No, that helps a lot because I did feel a strong presence and I did feel a lot of love that I didn't expect to feel. So that, but it wasn't like a phrase, but I did feel this over from this being because I had seen a picture of this woman's mother and I felt, yeah, it was surprising what I was feeling from this being. It wasn't like I was expecting that. So that,
Understand is that's an actual person you were feeling. So engage them. Don't just say, oh, I sense a person. You say, hey, I trust that you are here. Tell me something I don't know that will validate this. So you engage.
that's so good. That's why I tell people in remote viewing, okay, there's a target. What's coming to you? What are you feeling that's just out of nowhere? That what's surprising? This is what Russell Targ told me, who founded one. He said, what surprising thing pops into your awareness? And that's usually the target. And that's what you're saying too. What's like, just
Yeah,
look.
but there's such a different element to this than remote viewing. Remote viewing, you're going with non-interactive targets.
Yes.
Here you have the opportunity to actually real-time interact with a sentient, creative, conscious being. That's what we need to keep in mind so that we say, hey, tell me something. You actually felt that emotion. So that's the first step.
Mm. But you're right. You are interacting with in remote viewing. There's no, there's not the interaction that you have with the
Yeah.
beings. Well, let me ask you: have you met ever? I wrote this book on ETs, making. Have you ever met these extraterrestrial beings and those?
I have not, and I know it's because it's not my path. My guides made it really clear that I'm supposed to stick to a mainstream audience and first teach them it's all about love, and that I don't want to, no pun intended, alienate those who might think that that's too
Right.
far out there. I know what you do is real, but it's not my path.
Well, have you ever met though maybe higher beings, ascended beings that tapped into that level of awareness, or mostly people who've lived
I
in?
have not. I have not, and I know it's just because that's not where I'm supposed to go.
All right, maybe at some point you will. They'll
It'd
just.
be fun. Yeah, it'd be fun. No doubt about it. Yeah.
Your work now is to talk about that, but train people. Is that how would you describe your work?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm a spiritual teacher. And so I teach the awakened way. I teach processes for connecting with higher consciousness. I have daily messages that come in from my guides. We have an Awakened Way app that we're closing in on 50,000 people have downloaded that. It's free, absolutely free. And 400 some videos on YouTube, all about finding out that we're not only human and what to do with that.
Mm. Well, just talk about your guides for a second, because they're not people who beings who've crossed. What are the guides to you, your guides?
Yeah. My guides are a collective consciousness from various levels. I have my main spirit guide who helps me in day-to-day activities, but then I also have some former incarnated beings such as William James, the philosopher, Emanuel Swedenborg, the spiritual teacher from many centuries ago. Part of my group does consist of some higher beings, but they haven't always identified themselves. I know that Jesus is part of the group, and I was raised with no religion. So this continues to surprise me as well, Alan.
William James is very interesting. You know, he was into the whole psychical foundation. He started the American Psychic Foundation, Psychical Foundation. And his brother didn't believe anything that he wrote about that. Henry James, there was this conflict. They were students. Their father was a student of Swedenborg. They were Swedenborgians.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
Yes.
How perfect is that? You gave me goosebumps with that one.
Right. So they were brought up in a Swedenborgian thing, William and Henry James's father. But
You never told me that.
also, Jane Roberts wrote a book about William James. Did you know
I
that?
did. Yes, I did. Yeah.
That's a really great book in there. And I actually have a friend.
Well,
Yeah.
but the reason I know that he's a member of the team is because he dropped in on me one day when I was a passenger in our coach going across the country, and our motor coach. And I engaged his presence. I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "William James." And I said, "Well, you better tell me things about you that I don't know." And he gave me a whole list of things that I Googled later, and it was absolutely true and not in my conscious awareness. So I put him
Wow.
up for test.
Are you writing about William James in particular at all, or just the kind of the whole?
I've seen him in my monthly webinars from time to time when he drops in. I do those as well. Anybody can join my monthly connection webinars. They can find that on my website. And I always share the latest and greatest teachings from Spirit because I'm getting stuff every day.
Well, not to get too personal, but I want to ask you this question because you're getting it from spirit. But what if you were just to let the spirit move you, be channeled? What could you just channel directly from those beings
Oh,
without?
I do it all the time.
When you channel, do you get out of the way or do you still
Oh yeah,
present?
I get out of the way most of the time. I can do it. I can do it a bit with my eyes open. It's a very high energy to hold that link, but the channeling sessions are phenomenal. In fact, every monthly connection webinar, my guides give a pure channeled message for a few minutes as
So
well.
you channel your guides or you channel anything else? So
Just by my guides, and it's like I said, because it's a collective consciousness, sometimes they speak as I, sometimes they speak as we, using those different pronouns. But I never know what they're going to say, and that's what keeps it interesting.
so the channeling part's sort of a different muscle than just the mediumship stuff,
Yes,
but
it is. I like that.
it's related though somehow because
It's very related because I use the same process that I teach. It's the 7-step method that I talk about it in the mediumship book there.
oh good.
And it's the same process, only you set the intention to go to a higher frequency. It's like turning on your TV. You're going to go to the mediumship channel or the channeling channel or the ET channel, and then you just connect.
Or the remote viewing channel, or the telepathic channel, or yeah.
That's it.
So
Yep.
because what do you think? And they've done brain studies where this part of the hypothalamus is actually more activated in people who do that. Have you heard about the cadput, the puttum and cadput? There's a section that has more white matter that sort of, and some people can do this that maybe it's a physiological connection. It's psychic, but of course it's coming through the brain. So there is a physiological component, some people are saying. Have you studied
Oh,
that?
absolutely. You have to bypass the brain's filters and you have to dampen the left hemisphere activities and turn up and activate more of the right hemisphere. There's a lot of getting the brain out of the way that has to take
Right.
place. And that's training.
You know what Edgar Cayce, I think it was Edgar Cayce, Eben Alexander says this. Edgar Cayce said, it's not so much does consciousness survive the death of the body. The big question is how much does that vast consciousness survive the life of the body? Like
Oh, yeah.
how much of that vastness can you have in this embodiment?
Yes,
And
exactly. Yeah.
but we are moving to, I think, a more evolved, more expanded way of understanding. So there will be more consciousness in the body, I think.
Oh, no doubt about it. In fact, I led a cruise to Alaska last year, and this energy worker who I work with, helps me and many other clients, she noticed that 4 of her clients were more embodied. I said, "What do you mean by that?" She said, "Well, they were able to hold higher consciousness. It had moved from the head down into the heart." And she couldn't understand why suddenly they were 4 different people were that way. And it turns out they'd been on the cruise with me, which is just so affirming that being in the presence of my guides and getting these teachings and doing the meditation made a difference. So I just finished a cruise for another group just we went to the Mediterranean, and I told them all, you watch, you'll be able to embody higher consciousness as a result of all the time we're spending in the higher consciousness of spirit. So another cruise coming up to the Caribbean in the spring. It's really exciting when you immerse yourself in that higher vibration for longer periods of time, which anybody can do without going on a cruise. Just sit in meditation every day and you embody more of the soul.
Is there certain things in meditation you recommend to do to bring in the higher consciousness?
Try my video on YouTube called No More Meditation Excuses. It's
Okay.
a 3-minute practice I call the Sip of the Divine, and it's basic training 101 in focusing and noticing the thoughts and letting go of those that are just letting them flow right through you if they're not productive. But you learn to ask a question of higher consciousness and notice when the answer drops in. So that's just, it's fun because you're training yourself, you're experiencing expanded states of consciousness, but you're also starting to get answers and make that shift.
Well, you look fantastic. You even are glowing more than when I talked to you last. You're doing your life's, you're excited about your life's purpose. I mean,
There's no doubt it's a calling, but it's something that all of us can learn to do, tapping into the higher self. And it really does fill your day with greater joy, even on those days that are tough. You remember this too shall pass, and you learn tools such as the one my guides gave us. It's so basic, but you learn to say, isn't that interesting, when things dry, and you've just automatically gone to neutral instead of getting caught up in the drama.
so you're saying sometimes you do encounter personally things that trigger you, and then
Oh, just so much less than in the past, Alan, though. That's the beauty of it. I'm just a completely different person than I was before my stepdaughter died. That awakening was really a blessing in disguise, especially now that I know she's still here.
Will she incarnate again? Has she, I mean, do you know if that's like, it's up to her, I guess.
What I hear when I ask that is that the soul is consistently having new incarnations. We talked about that earlier. But I can connect with her because she's part of that overarching soul.
So
It's not all or nothing. She doesn't reincarnate and then I can't connect with her. Same with anybody's loved ones.
oh, I see. So even after they reincarnate, you can still connect with them on a soul level from when you knew them.
Picture the soul like a big sphere, and one lifetime is one subset within the soul. Limitless. Like the flower of life diagram, right?
Yeah.
There's Susan, but here's another incarnation within the same soul. So I just tap into Susan.
I think science is going to catch up with this understanding of soul essence, and then
Wait.
and then we will do away with the old time religions, and it won't be about belief. It'll be more about knowing and
Yes. Yeah.
feeling and
Yeah.
compassion. And but thank you, Suzanne, for doing what you're doing and being a light, and you're working. I feel this that you're working in yourself all the time. When you come up against something, you kind of go deeper in and just move through that. And
That's the goal. That's that making this shift. I'm not only human. So that's if the book Mediumship helps people to realize that, hopefully they'll dive into the awakened way and just continue this journey that we all came here to go on together. And
right. So
thank you.
yes, I'm just going to say, get Suzanne's new book, Mediumship by Common Sentience. Well, I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Is there anything you want to leave people with? Like, people have predicted things for the future. I mean, someone I just interviewed said there'll be this big flash of light. I mean, do you have anything like that?
Intention is so important. So set the intention to come to know who you really are beyond the body, and then buckle your seatbelt.
Oh, are we going to be in for some rocky?
No, buckle your seatbelt means it's gonna be fun. It's like riding a roller coaster. You know, it's just a joyous journey that we're on. Not, like I said, not always pleasant, but once you learn the tools to you realize you're not only human, it makes all the difference in the world.
Do we ever graduate from the...
Read the section from the guides on what happens in the afterlife. There are absolutely stages that we go through till you just decide, okay, had that.
Right. Thank you for your time and your book.